Until we join them again. Until we join them again. Today will be a joyful day. Until we join them again.
The chalice is the symbol of our UU faith. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, it's time now to light them together as we say the same words we say each week at our fellowship.
We light this flame as a symbol of new life, enlightening our way as a symbol of the warmth in every human heart.
Let the lighting of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of hope, of peace, of love. May we share that light with all people.
Good morning. I am Marie Luna, your Director of Congregational Life. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It is good to be together, even when we have to be physically apart. If you are joining us from another Unitarian Universalist fellowship, we warmly welcome you. If this is your first time visiting the fellowship, I want to extend you a special welcome. I encourage you to reach out to us to find out more about our fellowship. I am happy to help get you connected. Please email me. I'll make sure to put my email address in the chat box. Today's service is being led and supported by Allie Peters, our Intern Minister, Reverend Leah Angiri, our Associate Minister, Suzanne Marnaka, our Worship Leader, Kim Hartman, our Director of Religious Education, Steve Seek, our Music Director, our wonderful musicians and singers, and Adam Robinson, our AV Tech. Thank you to everyone who made this morning's service possible. This year, we are focusing on growing resilience. We're digging into what it means to grow ourselves and our community, to be sources of life, even when things get rough. Right now, we're in the weeks of our theme of cultivating sufficiency. Thank you for joining us as we grow into our awareness that we, each of us, individually and as a community, are enough, just as we are. We're so glad you're here. I invite you to settle into your space, wherever you are, setting aside your week in whatever way you are able, so that we can be together fully, even from afar.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be
Good morning. Each of us, no matter our age or stage in life, we're always on a journey. Our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles call us to a free and a responsible search for truth and meaning. And so we take time each week to listen to stories and to explore ideas in new ways. Right now, there is something inside of the Wonder Box. If you'd like to guess what you think is in here, go ahead and type your answers into the chat box, or have somebody help you type your answer into the chat box. It's just always so much fun to see what other people are guessing. It's time that we find out. I need your help before we do. Drum roll, please. Keep drum rolling. End drum roll. It's an acorn. You've probably seen a lot of acorns on the ground throughout the year. This acorn reminds me of a story that Allie wrote that's about squirrels and acorns. Let's listen.
This story is called Enough for Pasha, and it's by me, Allie Peters, with puppetry by Miss Kim Hartman. Pasha the squirrel came out of her nest early one morning and sniffed the air. The grove felt chilly and it smelled earthy and sweet. The leaves on the trees were beginning to light up with reds and yellows and oranges. Fall was here. It's time to get to work, thought Pasha. She knew that after fall would come winter, a time when it was too hard to find food and too cold for squirrels to leave their warm little nests. So every year, when fall came, it was time for squirrels like Pasha to start collecting extra food. They would collect seeds and nuts and berries, and Pasha's favorite, acorns. Then they'd bury their treats in hiding spots near their nests so that they would have food all winter long. Pasha decided that she would spend the morning collecting food for the winter, and then after that, she would have time to play with her squirrel friend, Raina, in the afternoon. As the sun was starting to rise, Pasha headed off out of the grove to one of her favorite oak trees, a big, beautiful tree behind the elementary school in town. Pasha got to the oak tree and was thrilled to see that it had dropped so many acorns on the ground. She gathered a few up, stuffing each acorn into her cheeks so she could carry them back to her nest. When her cheeks felt full, she looked up at the tree and nodded a thank you before turning back toward the grove. Just as she started back, Barty the raccoon came out from behind the school's dumpster, dragging a half-eaten banana with him. He was heading home to sleep after a long night of foraging for food. "You sure you have enough acorns there, Pasha? I don't know how you are ever going to collect enough food to last you all winter long. I would starve if I couldn't go out to find new garbage to eat every night. There's plenty more acorns under that tree. You should take them all." But Pasha just smiled with her full stuffed cheeks and waved. She knew she had collected enough acorns for now, and she was glad there were acorns left for others to enjoy, and maybe even a few that would grow into new oak trees. So Pasha kept moving. Soon, she saw Mina the spider crawl out from under a tattered brown leaf on the ground nearby. "Greedy, greedy, Pasha," she said. "Look at all those acorns you are hoarding in your cheeks. I don't know why you think you need so many. After I eat a meal, I don't need to eat for weeks. Greedy, greedy, Pasha." But Pasha just smiled with her full stuffed cheeks and waved. She knew she had collected enough acorns for now, and she was glad she would not need to worry about finding food this winter. Unlike spiders, squirrels could not go weeks without eating. She ran back to her nest, buried her stash of acorns, and spent the afternoon joyfully chasing Raina around the grove. Pasha's days went on like this. She would collect food in the morning, hide it away for the winter, and then spend the afternoon playing with Raina. But as the fall went on and daylight got shorter, Pasha noticed that Raina seemed a little different. She didn't want to play as much anymore. "What's wrong?" Pasha asked Raina one day. "Oh, I don't know," said Raina. "When the days get colder and there's less sunshine because the nights are longer, I just start feeling sad and tired. I wish I wanted to play, but right now I don't even feel like leaving my nest. I don't even feel up to gathering food for the winter. I just can't do it. I'm sorry, Pasha. You should go play without me. The next morning, Pasha gathered acorns at the oak tree behind the school. This time, she collected more than enough. She stuffed so many acorns in her cheeks that they started to hurt. Pasha nodded thank you to the tree and then left. "That a girl," called Barty the raccoon. "Greedy, greedy," scolded Mina the spider. Pasha's days went on like this, each morning stuffing a few extra acorns in her cheeks, each afternoon missing her friend Raina, who wouldn't come out of her nest. At the end of the fall, Pasha went to visit Raina. She found her in her nest, crying. "What's wrong, Raina?" asked Pasha. "Oh, I've been so exhausted and sad. I haven't collected any food for the winter. And now winter is here and I have nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do," sobbed Raina. "Don't worry. I collected extra food, enough for both of us," said Pasha. Raina looked up at her, stunned. "What?" she asked. "But why would you do something so nice for me? I haven't done anything to deserve that. I haven't done my part to collect any food. I haven't even played with you. I haven't done enough." "But Raina," said Pasha, "you are enough." Raina was confused. "What do you mean?" "Raina, it's okay. You're going through a hard time right now, and you don't need to do anything to deserve help from a friend. You deserve it just because you are you. You are enough." Raina was so overcome with gratitude that she hugged Pasha tightly in her little squirrel arms. And for both of them in that moment, holding their dear friend close to them, they both felt loved and valuable and like everything was just fine. And right now, that moment felt like enough. The end.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving heart, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart lives in a holy place.
Our reading this morning is from Lynn Twist, the co-founder of the Pachamama Alliance. In her book called The Soul of Money, she says this: "We each have the choice in any setting to step back and let go of the mindset of scarcity. Once we let go of scarcity, we discover the surprising truth of sufficiency. By sufficiency, I don't mean a quantity of anything. Sufficiency isn't 2 steps up from poverty or 1 step short of abundance. It isn't a measure of barely enough or more than enough. Sufficiency isn't an amount at all. It's an experience, a context we generate, a declaration, a knowing that there is enough and that we are enough. When we live in the context of sufficiency, We find a natural freedom and integrity. We engage in life from a sense of our own wholeness rather than a desperate longing to be complete. We feel naturally called to share our resources that flow through our lives to serve our highest commitments. Sufficiency as a way of being offers us enormous personal freedom and possibility. Rather than scarcity's myth that tells us that the only way to perceive the world is there is not enough, more is better, and that's just the way it is. The truth of sufficiency asserts that there is enough for everyone. Knowing there is enough inspires sharing, collaboration, and contribution. Hear these words.
With fall progressing, our huge orange maple tree has dropped all of her leaves. The horses are beginning to grow their winter coats. The honeybees are laying in their last stores of pollen and nectar for the long winter, and I have had to put on a coat and a hat and gloves for our morning walks on the Weawash Trail. The COVID crisis has demanded that we stay enclosed within our little farm and focus on our many tasks. There is a lot of hard work, but the chores are satisfying all the same. The majority of our time has been spent harvesting and preserving food and caring for our animals. We grow a variety of delicious produce, including cabbages, broccoli, onions, okra, kale, green beans, tomatillos, tomatoes, potatoes, and carrots. We also pick wild grapes and wild elderberries to make jam. And of course, there is the honey harvest in early fall. Our beloved animals also need a lot of care. They must be fed and their pens need cleaning. There is a daily collecting of eggs, keeping water tanks full for horses, alpaca, llama, and all of the chickens. We also practice composting and supporting our healthy soil using the bedding from our animals. Soon we will travel to Fleet Farm in the early morning to buy new heaters for the animals' water tanks to prevent the water from freezing. We are feeding our 7 beehives and will cover them with cozies like you might do a teapot. We place reducers in their openings to prevent mice from moving in. Another one of our important chores is hauling firewood and covering the great piles with tarps. As I lay in bed at night, I review the day and all we have accomplished. Thank you, friends, for your help. One inspiration for our way of life came to Mark and me years ago in the form of a little book, Living the Good Life, which is about the lives of Helen and Scott Nearing. They were engaged in a total self-sustaining lifestyle, including building their own home and raising and foraging their own food. Their personal philosophy was clear. They worked to live and not live to work. They planned each day and always each project together. They always allotted half of the day for work and half of the day for personal activities such as reading and playing music. They lived the concept of enough. They needed enough time to work on tasks such as cooking and building projects and gardening, but also half the day was dedicated to connect with nature and themselves. When they accomplished their predetermined tasks, they stopped and did no more. Just as the Nearings did, we try to plan our days and projects carefully. We find that planning allows us to sit quietly together and to better prioritize our time and efforts. Our goal is to try and balance our time, needs, wants, and supply of food from our land. We continue to be inspired by the Nearings. They took enough from the land, but always felt committed to replacing what they had taken. May we all learn from such inspiring people and continue to replace what we take from the land back to the land. May it be so. Namaste.
When I was a kid, I wasn't lucky enough to live near my grandparents. I grew up in New Jersey, and my grandparents lived all the way out in Omaha, Nebraska. So we only got to see them about once a year, and going to visit them was always a big deal. And each time I looked forward to our visits to Omaha. I looked forward to seeing my grandparents waiting for us outside the airport terminal when we arrived. I looked forward to them taking us to their local zoo, which was a ritual that we did each visit. I look forward to what they called sneak breakfasts, which was a really special morning during our trip when my grandparents would wake my brother and me up so early before my parents were awake, and they would take us out for pancakes. And I also looked forward to watching their cable television at their house. That was always such a treat for kids like us who didn't have cable. They were nice visits to Omaha, and it was so good to be together. And one thing that also stands out to me in these memories were the times when I could see my grandma's face getting sad. She would be hugging us as we arrived at the airport, and I would hear her say, "Oh, I can't believe you're only going to be here for a week." We would be in the reptile house at the zoo laughing at how gross we thought the snakes were. And then I'd see her face fall and she'd say, "Oh, I'm going to be so sad when it's time for you to leave." We would be pouring syrup onto our pancakes and I would see her shoulders drop. I've been looking forward to this visit with you all for so long. I can't believe it's going to be over so quickly. During these times, I remember feeling like I was being jolted out of the joy of being together. Jolted out of enjoying each other. Jolted with the icy cold splash of sadness or guilt. We never seemed to have enough time together. Enough. What even is enough, right? What's enough of anything? Enough can feel so elusive, so even unachievable. And these days, especially, I think it's really hard We dance with others in the street when the first Black South Asian woman and child of immigrants is elected into the White House. And then we feel the icy cold splash, remembering that there is still so much work and healing to be done and so many problems to address. We get a few days of beautiful weather in November, giving us the chance to spend time with friends and loved ones safely, outside, enjoying the sunshine. But then comes the icy cold splash, remembering that we will still be facing an entire winter in this pandemic, and our time in the sun doesn't feel like enough. None of it feels like enough. But I'm so grateful to our worship leader, Suzanne, who in her reflection reminds us that there's so much wisdom that can be learned from spending intimate time with the land and with nature. Wisdom that has taught her what enough feels like. Hearing Suzanne's words actually draws me back to a Wendell Berry poem that I love. It's a poem called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. In this poem, Barry never once uses the word enough. And yet to me, that's what this poem embodies. This poem feels like enough. It feels like Wendell Berry is describing an experience of enough. And also, each time I read this poem, the words themselves, those words on the page, they feel like enough. It makes me exhale. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Perhaps the reason this feeling of enough can be so elusive is because enough only exists in this moment. Perhaps it's something we can only access right now. We can't grab enough outside of this moment. This one, right now. Or maybe this one, right now. Or perhaps this one, right now. The wild things do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. Right now, the water is still. The day-blind stars are there above us, waiting with their light. I have to admit, The sermon that I am preaching right now is wildly different from what I thought this sermon would be when I first chose the title, Enough. And I'll also admit the story Kim and I shared with you earlier was wildly different from what I thought that story would be when I planned to write a story about squirrels gathering acorns under the theme of enough. Because in a world of capitalism and comparison and competition, we have been taught to think that enough is simply a word used to demonstrate an amount. I don't have enough money to buy that. I don't have enough time to do that. I'm not old enough, young enough, smart enough, good-looking enough, strong enough, happy enough. But I love how our reading today by Lynn Twist makes the disclaimer that when talking about enough, when Lynn Twist is talking about enough, she's not talking about an amount. Sufficiency isn't 2 steps up from poverty or 1 step short of abundance, she says. It's an experience, a context we generate. It's engaging life from a sense of wholeness rather than a longing to be complete. But it can be hard to live this when we do live in a world that is built around capitalism, comparison, and competition. When struggling to have the amount of money needed to put food on the table is a lived reality for so many. Living into an experience of enough in this moment, though, does not negate that or gloss over it or ignore it. It's not an experience that tells us that we shouldn't want anything or need anything or that we should just appreciate what we have. We can feel welcome to grieve and wail at the doorstep of tragedy and injustice. Injustice created by systems and structures. We can feel moved and called to fight for a better world, and we can also feel invited to lean in to experiences of sufficiency in any given moment. The wild things that do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. The presence of still water. The day-blind stars waiting with their light. The enoughness that is the birthright of existence. And one thing I think we can learn from Suzanne and Pasha the squirrel and our reading from Lynn Twist this morning is that honoring this birthright, drawing ourselves deeper into experiences of sufficiency and enoughness, also draws us closer to the world around us and to the world that we as people of faith aspire to create. You are enough. This moment is enough. May it be so, and amen. And now, at this time, we are so fortunate to have the chance to experience Beethoven's piece, O Welsh Lust. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a beautiful and moving piece offered by our music director, Steve Seek, who has powerfully reimagined it for our current context of the pandemic. A time that reminds us how even just appreciating a breath can be an experience of enough in a single moment.
Sharing our individual joys and concerns helps us uncover and cultivate new pathways forward. This becomes a collective process when we risk being open about our journey with one another. If you so choose, now is the time to type into the chat box any personal news you might wish us all to know. This gives us the gift of being able to celebrate, mourn, witness, and travel along with you. If you would like a one-on-one connection, I hope you will be in touch with me, and I can make sure that someone from the ministry team or the care team is available to spend some time with you. Anyone is also welcome to submit joys and concerns via our website or by emailing me or any member of our staff. We will include this news in our weekly email. Let us breathe into this shared silence, taking in and breathing out the hope and prayer and great spiritual truth that we have enough and that we are enough. May it always be so.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
Each week, we take time for generosity, remembering that the acts of giving and receiving are spiritual practices. As always, if you are in need of financial or emotional support, please reach out to any of our ministers, Reverend Christina, Reverend Leah, or Allie, so they can offer help, including modest financial support through the minister's discretionary fund. For those of you who are feeling relatively more financially secure, we want to thank you for continuing to give and ask you to keep doing so. There are several ways that you can give to the fellowship and many reasons to do so. Here are just a few.
Hi there, Dana Johnson here, and I just wanted to give a little bit of reflection of why I continue to support the fellowship, why it's so important that we stay engaged even in these crazy pandemic times, and just helping to keep each other safe, healing, and staying connected. I came to the fellowship just a year ago and have found an incredible home. What I love about the fellowship, even in these pandemic times, is it's one of the places that I feel the most connected. And how is that? I'm part of the care team, and the ability to check in with so many of us with joys and concerns, and making sure that others are feeling that they are heard, that they are healing, and that they are loved and appreciated. I also appreciate the groups that have gotten together kind of intermittently to play games online, or perhaps be part of our Journeys groups, and just have those times, even though we're all zoomed out, the ability to have that moment with people that are not only connected because we're friends, but we're connected in a spiritual way. I also love the online services for a number of reasons. Some days I just don't like to do my hair, and the ability for me to just kind of be involved and be there in that process. I've always felt like the fellowship is like going to yoga, having a prayer opportunity, being or participating in a concert, and then just having those moments of healing. It's like It's like having a spa day for me. So if you're having thoughts about being zoomed out, or you're just not sure if you can join us every week, for me, it's an ability to kind of reset my mind for the coming week. And I would implore you to get involved and stay connected.
As we now come to the end of our service, we will extinguish our chalice flame, even as we still hold its light in our hearts.
As we extinguish the flame, let us go our ways with hope in our hearts, with our spirits renewed, and with a deeper understanding of life's mystery. Let us carry the light of compassion and commitment to build a better world.
After our closing words, we will be having small breakout groups, just like we do as usual, for 15 minutes of connection and conversation. In a moment, we will hear a short postlude song. If you do not want to participate in the small group conversations, then please use the postlude music time to log off and leave this Zoom meeting. If you choose to stay, I encourage you to learn each other's names and pay attention to the timer in the corner so that everyone gets a chance to share. And with that, go in resilience, growing in strength. Go in sufficiency, remembering that you are enough. Go in peace, knowing we embrace each other even now from a distance.